Hello there. I am Megan Ennis of the Shared Value Initiative. We recently polled our sharedvalue.org community on what you need most to implement shared value approaches in your organization. And the number one thing that you're looking for is access to shared value thought leaders. So for that reason, I'm lucky to have our initiative strategic advisor, Mark Kramer, with me today. Mark is also the co-founder and managing director of our guiding firm, FSG, and co-author with Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter of the landmark 2011 Harvard Business Review article, Creating Shared Value. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Thank you, Megan. It's great to be here.
Great. So today, Mark will be answering some questions that were submitted ahead of time by members of our online Shared Value Initiative community. So let's start off with the first question. Raphael Du of Nexus Carbon for Development asks, could you help differentiate shared value from the term inclusive business? She says that in all the literature she's been through, it doesn't seem obvious that both the concepts are distinct. So I wonder if you could speak to that.
Sure, it's a great question. And I should also emphasize that there are many other thought leaders out there besides me and Michael, and I do hope that we can continue this series and engage others in it as well. But to answer the question, shared value is really an umbrella concept, and many other concepts such as corporate social responsibility, sustainability, and inclusive business overlap with it. I understand inclusive business. It's really about engaging the poor, both in producers and as consumers in business. And there certainly are many examples we talk about in shared value that involve reaching out to provide new products, new services to the poor, whether it's banking services for lower income customers, whether it's the work that Novartis has done in India to reach rural Indian villages with their medicines. These are all great examples, but there are also many other examples of shared value that reach more affluent populations or look at the environmental impacts of a company that have nothing to do with the income level of the people they serve. And so we've often talked about Walmart as being a great example of a company saving billions of dollars by rethinking its environmental impact and reducing its energy footprint. That's really different in my mind from inclusive business. Or another wonderful example is Discovery Health Insurance, which has found a way to create financial incentives for their health insurance members to actually engage in healthier behavior and actually get sick less often and have a longer life expectancy. And they serve a population in Australia, in China, in the UK, in the US that is a relatively affluent population. But their service actually creates improved health outcome, which is a great example of shared value.
That's great. That really, I think that's going to help her differentiate between those two terms and kind of get a feel for the entire landscape. So that's really helpful. So let's move on to the next question, which comes from Kurata Gadenzi of Horizon Capital. He says, one way to promote shared value in the business community would be to promote the investment strategies of companies who are already adopting shared value. So how can we detect those companies that are doing this? And he wonders, are any of the available ESG metrics useful to this purpose?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Porter and I have been working in the last couple of years on the investor perspective on shared value because we do think that mobilizing investors is tremendously important. The short answer is it's not easy. It really takes the same degree of rigorous investigation that you would apply to other aspects of security analysis to detect if a company really is following a shared value strategy. It's not something you're going to get from the rankings that show up on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index or things like that. Most of those rankings are based on companies simply filling out surveys without a lot of verification or in-depth analysis. When you think about the ESG criteria, I think the E criteria, the environmental performance, is very representative of whether a company is thinking about reducing its environmental footprint, about improving its value chain in ways that create shared value around the environment. So I think that's relevant. The social metrics and the governance metrics, I think, are much less reliable and relevant. The social metrics will tell you if the company is reducing any harms it might cause in its value chain, but they won't usually tell you whether the company is really thinking about overcoming market failures to reach new populations in its business, whether the company's products themselves are beneficial. For example, I think about banks and the subprime mortgage crisis that really shook the financial markets all over the world. Well, banks had wonderful CSR reports and sustainability reports and might have performed very well on ESG rankings, but the fact that some of their core products were actually bad for their customers and bad for the future of the bank are things that wouldn't have turned up in ESG. So I think you have to actually go back to the original article, to the three levels of value creation, the products, the value chain, and the cluster, and say, are the company's products good for its customers? And are they, in fact, pursuing new opportunities to reach new markets with new products that overcome market failures? Are they looking through their value chain and taking responsibility not just for environmental impact, but for sourcing? If they are sourcing agricultural products from smallhold farmers, are they improving the yields and productivity of those farmers, or simply buying on the open market their supplies? Are they really investing in the communities where they operate in ways that strengthen the local cluster, that improve the competitiveness of their industry or of that company? So you really have to look at each of the three levels and see whether the company is not only saying the right things, but is actually making choices in their investments and in their strategy to follow shared value.
Great, and I think that's actually a really good overview of a lot of the research that FSG has come up with in the past few years. And I'm thinking specifically about the banking report where
Sure.
You talked about how some banks are actually thinking differently about their products in this way, which is great.
Yeah, and I think our industry reports, and of course we have one that will be coming out soon on extractives, and have done one previously on global health, are good examples of how you can really discern whether a company is a good example of shared value. And of course, there are many companies that have great shared value initiatives, but the company as a whole is not yet really embracing shared value. And there are relatively few companies where you can really say this company as a whole is truly pursuing a shared value strategy.
Right. So, they're just on a journey, I suppose,
Right.
which is what we say around here.
Right.
So maybe we should move on to the next question, which is from Elfie Torres of our consulting affiliate firm Fundes. He asks, how can we create, in a similar vein, how can we create awareness among corporations regarding shared value? He's wondering about how we can make it so this becomes a real need for firms, so they are willing to look for and really pay for solutions.
Well, all of us who earn a living from consulting are eager to find answers to this question. And again, I'm not sure that there's a simple answer. But I will say that, Porter and I have been very pleasantly surprised or astonished at how much the shared value language is being used. I think one of the barriers is to help companies understand that simply using the words doesn't mean that they're actually implementing a shared value strategy. And that it isn't the same as CSR or sustainability or other programs that they may already have in place. Again and again, it comes back to the business case. If there isn't a strong and compelling business case for a shared value initiative, companies aren't going to spend a lot of money trying to develop it or pursue it. And so companies are often not used to really thinking rigorously about the business case when they step into social issues, into engaging with social issues. And so really making clear what are the financial consequences and opportunities for companies, and companies have such a blind spot here. And so I think that we as consultants can do some of the work before we go talk to the company to really identify in advance what are social issues that are going to matter to this company's future, just based on what we know publicly about them. And what are some of the financial implications? If this company, again, is sourcing from smallhold farmers, and we know that there are huge issues about agriculture being able to keep pace with the growing population and the growing demand, and the cost implications of shortages in particular agricultural products, that's something we can talk about. And the same is true for many other scarce resources. Another key approach we've found is to be able to point to what a competitor is doing in the way of shared value. And nothing motivates a company more than the sense that their competitor is already doing something that they're not. And so, again, part of the value for us in doing these research reports around industries is to help move the industry. Because when a bank sees that other banking companies around the world are gaining profit and growth and advantage from embracing shared value in areas that they haven't been looking at, they take it seriously, and they begin to think and question about how they can do that and begin to be willing to commit resources to it. And then I think lastly, engaging the CEOs. It was interesting. I had a conversation, a wonderful conversation with the head of sustainability globally for PricewaterhouseCoopers, Malcolm Preston, based out of London. And I asked him, why do you think shared value has caught on so much around the world? And he said it's one word, it's legacy. CEOs want to create a legacy that goes beyond just increasing shareholder value. They know they need to increase shareholder value. And what's nice about the creating shared value concept is it enables them to simultaneously focus on delivering value to the shareholders and on creating a legacy that is more inspiring than simply increasing quarterly earnings. And so I think you need to play on all of these factors when you talk to a company. You can't just come in and say, gee, wouldn't it be nice if the company did something to make the world a better place. You have to come in and have some real quantitative numbers that suggest that the company has an opportunity here that has real financial consequences at scale for the company. You have to be able to talk about what competitors or others in similar industries or situations are doing. And you have to be able to inspire the CEO and the others in the C-suite to really recognize the opportunity they have to create a personal legacy here at the same time that they can get out in front of competitors and earn really stronger profits and returns for their shareholders.
Yeah, and those are actually sound like, great talking points for external folks coming into a company like a consultant, but it sounds also, for the shared value champions within a company, like those, keeping up with your competitors, making the business case, engaging the CEO. It sounds like it could work both internally and externally too.
And that's a great point, Megan. Every company we've talked with or worked with that has been really interested in shared value has had someone within the company who has been a real champion for shared value. And it's often not the CEO. Usually it is not the CEO. And that person has been essential and instrumental in introducing the concept to the company and helping others learn about it. But we've also seen that it's a real challenge for them to spread this thinking throughout the company. We still run into this mindset that if it's about social issues, it can't be serious business. And if it's serious business, you shouldn't be thinking about social issues. And getting people over that hurdle is the key step toward selling a shared value initiative or engagement. And it's not easy. And often what the champion within the company can do is get others in the company to at least read some materials, to at least attend a webinar or attend a conference or talk to peers from other companies that are further advanced on this concept. And often the most the champion can do is lead others in the company to hear outside voices that can convey the message in a way that sometimes the champion, him or herself, can't convey directly internally just because of the politics and dynamics within the company.
I think that's really helpful for those, aspiring champions out there to hear. So maybe we should move on to the next question, which is switching gears a little bit into something that I know that you've written about recently. It comes from Asi Chandrakar, who is a MBA candidate at Santa Clara University here in the United States. She asks, What have been the key barriers for dialogues around responsible business and shared value in the academic world? She wants to know, what's your idea about formally including shared value in a B-School curriculum, and what she can do as a student to drive the tectonic shift from classrooms to the business world.
That's great, and I love her reference to a tectonic shift. That's wonderful. Well, I do think that it is beginning to get into business school curricula. Actually, Porter and I are developing an executive education course which will be offered this December at Harvard, and we're developing 6 full teaching cases that will be used in that course, and then will be in the Harvard Business School curricula for teaching cases that can be used by other business schools around the world. And we hope by a year from now to actually have at least 15 or 20 full teaching cases that can be used as curricula in other business schools. But I think, some of the barriers are simply the fact that we haven't yet written as many articles, as many books, and so on, as need to be written to really give a deep academic basis to the shared value concept. I think that there are already concepts that are very well developed out there around corporate responsibility, around sustainability in particular, that have rich academic content and many books and articles that can be taught, that can engage faculty in dialogue and debate. And I think that the shared value concept is still pretty new, and to be honest, we have emphasized reaching out to companies to engage them in shared value, reaching out to other consulting firms like our affiliates to engage them in working on shared value, more than we've emphasized reaching out to academics at this point to engage them. So I think it's a little bit our fault in not having generated more academic research yet and not having really focused our limited bandwidth on the academics. But I think it will happen as the body of material continues to grow and increase, and as businesses make clear that they're taking this seriously and they want to see this skill set and this body of knowledge reflected in the business school graduates that they hire. I think as a student, it's challenging to change a curriculum at the school. I think there are often many schools that have social enterprise clubs or other student organizations that focus in on the social dimension. And I think that's a great vehicle to work through to create extracurricular activities, to bring speakers to campus, to highlight cases and create student-led discussions and conferences around creating shared value. There have been conferences that students have led on creating shared value in different business schools around the world. That's important. And I think that's probably the most promising way to go in the short run, is to work through the extracurricular organizations and activities, organize conferences, and bring speakers to campus who can reflect a shared value perspective in their work at companies.
Great, and that bears a remarkable similarity to what we were just talking about with, if the leadership can't be the champion, then maybe, the students have to take the lead extracurricularly. So that, I think that would be really helpful for the students in our community who've been asking. So thanks for that. So we have time for one more question. It's a pretty simple one. It comes from a community member and community super user, really, David Laurel of the Nestle Philippines. He simply asks, what is the future of shared value?
Well, that may sound like a simple question to you.
I know, right?
It doesn't sound so simple to me. But first, I want to say hi to David, and I remember being in the Philippines and speaking at a Nestle Shared Value Forum there, and being so deeply impressed with the work they've done with dairy farmers in the Philippines. Really over decades, dramatically increasing their productivity, their incomes, helping them now actually capture methane from the cows as an alternative energy source to power the farm, and really having built an industry and a market that didn't exist there. So in some ways, I think what David has done in the Philippines, which has really been transformative for an industry and for the company, Nestle, is a great example of the future of shared value, in which companies are really changing conditions on the ground at a countrywide or regional scale. And in doing so, strengthening their own markets, not just their own suppliers, but also their customers, creating greater affluence that enables more purchase of the company's products. That sort of virtuous cycle is, I think, a great example of the future of shared value. But I also think the future of shared value, in a way, in the long term, is going to be to disappear, in the sense that rather than talking about shared value as a separate topic, we really believe it needs to be integrated in the other disciplines of business. So there are shared value dimensions to marketing, and shared value dimensions to logistics, and shared value dimensions to accounting, and shared value dimensions to every aspect of business discipline. And what we want to see, which has happened with other dimensions and to a degree with sustainability, is for shared value thinking to become embedded in other disciplines, and a bit less of its own precious approach and subject area, and much more simply the way of doing business that has changed how people do business, to really enable them to build the social dimension and consequences of their activity into every business decision they make in every discipline. And in that sense, it may begin eventually to appear. I don't think that's going to happen in the next few years. I'm not too worried about that. But our hope is that it really just becomes embedded in the way of doing business around the world.
And then we'll have really done our jobs.
Absolutely.
At that point.
Absolutely.
Well, that is really great, and thanks so much, Mark, for taking the time to answer our questions today. That's all we have. But on behalf of the initiative, I'd like to really thank you for taking the time and tell the community and answer their questions.
Well, thank you. And Megan, you've been doing just a wonderful job in helping build this community. And of course, the community depends on the activeness of its members. And so I really hope people will take this opportunity to respond on our various blogs and community forums to the comments I've made. Not everything I've said is necessarily correct, so I look forward to being corrected. But I also look forward to people expanding on what we've talked about here, because these are very important questions and important topics, and we really need not just one or two people to weigh in, but people around the world and throughout the community to weigh in on these topics. So I hope this starts further conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think that we'll definitely be talking about these issues in the community. Thanks all of you for watching, by the way. We'll be posting this interview shortly on sharedvalue.org, where we do invite you to comment and respond and talk about these issues further. If you're not already a member, we invite you to become a member. It's an open, online, free shared value community on sharedvalue.org. Here you can network directly with leaders in the field, pen your own thoughts in blog posts, and receive regular updates and research from shared value thinkers like Mark and some of the companies that we talked about today. Thank you so much, and until next time.